Welcome to the latest episode of Dear Rach and Soph. I'm not putting a number of episode on it because
You've
not quite
lost
sure
track.
exactly
No,
when it will be released. What was that, Rachel?
you've lost track. No.
I've lost track because we've been in a recording delirium. Hello, Rachel Johns.
Hello, Sophie Green. How are you?
I'm very well. And even though yesterday in the world time, our recording time, we recorded 2 episodes, we actually have news since we last spoke. So why don't you go first with your news?
Oh, well, my news is not, super exciting, except that I've written 3,000 words today, and I don't remember the last time I ever wrote 3,000 words. And as well as writing 3,000 words, and making a chocolate cake, I should add, just being productive today, and I'm not usually. So I also had an idea, very, very basic beginning idea for a new rom-com book. So it's enemies to lovers, and it's something that I've always the careers of the characters, something I've always wanted to write about, but I won't say more than that for now. I'm just gonna let it percolate.
Okay.
And then when I've got a bit more of an idea, I really almost want to write it before my Outback rom-coms, which I'm supposed to be writing next. But the people who love my rural romances might not like that, so we'll have to see.
Well, the 3,000 words thing, let's address that. Was that actually something you had planned, or you just found yourself on a tear?
Look, my plan every day at the moment is just to write as much as I can. But usually for me, I get to about 2,000 words and my brain just flops, dies, decides it wants to have a rest.
Powers down. Let's say it powers
down. Powers down. That's a good word.
Yeah.
And no matter if I'm, in the middle of a scene or I know what's happening next, I just can't seem to keep going. But today I did. So here we are. And I could have kept going longer, I think, except that I had to make the cake.
Right.
And I also had to do this. So, yes. And afterwards, I have to finish Natasha Less's book because I still haven't finished that because I went out last night and I'm interviewing her tomorrow. So,
well, and I need to write some questions for my interview of her, which
I need to do that as well.
recording is a week away. So, yeah. So we have Natasha Lester related activities. I actually said Natasha Lester related. I was trying to go for it.
Look, can't speak after yesterday.
Can't speak after yesterday, and also today I have interviewed Felicity Urquhart and Josh Cunningham for my Sunday Sunburnt Country Music. See, I really can't speak. I correct this before our guest arrives. For Sunburnt Country Music, I interviewed Josh and Felicity. Now I've talked to them several times before, and I always love doing interviews with guests I've interviewed several times before because you kind of enter at a midpoint.
And you're already kind of friends, and
yeah, we have a conversational rhythm. And for anyone who doesn't know Felicity and Josh's work, so Josh is in the Waifs, which a lot of people know. Felicity has her own well-established career, and God, they're just magic, the two of them, live and recorded. So they're not touring a lot.
You have to be nervous too, because you kind of know, not that we're nervous when you're interviewing, but you know what I mean? Like, nervous is the wrong word, but you know what to expect, don't you? It's not like, oh, what's this going to be like, this interview? What's this person going to be like? You've done it before, so you kind of, know what's going to happen.
Except that I do have this element of wanting to try to come up with something new and different, right? Because I've spoken to them a few times before.
That makes sense. Yes, of course.
How do I actually come up with an angle that's going to be different for them? Yeah. So that is the conundrum.
That's the conundrum to writing books, right? We got to do the same thing but different every time because the readers like what you've done before. Especially in terms of like genre fiction, rom-coms and things like that. You've got to do it the same but different every time.
True. And as we're talking, I'm just trying to put on my focus, Rach, so that I don't get unwanted text messages, because sometimes this is something I forget to do before we start.
I'm impressed that you know how to do that because I don't even know how to do that. So, I just hope, and if it happens, it happens. So you had some other exciting news I just saw on the internet today.
I did, yeah. I sent out a newsletter with my new cover, and by the time this episode comes out, the cover will be out in the world. So the book is called Lessons in Love at the Seaside Salon. It will be out in August 2025. The cover is coral, I think is the color.
I'm just looking at it now. Ooh, yeah, coral is a good.
Do you think it's coral? I'm not sure.
I think it's a bit deeper than coral.
So it's
not quite orange. It's a beautiful color.
Thank you. It's a reddy orangey color. Maybe it's coral. If anyone would like to give me an opinion on whether or not it's coral, I don't really know, but I'm thrilled with it because I think Krista Moffat who does all my covers, does a beautiful job. And each time a new cover comes through, I'm really excited to see what she comes up with.
Definitely. And this one fits in perfectly with the others, yet it's also different enough that, you know, you don't think you've already read it. I find that that's the dilemma sometimes with having a really strong brand. I've seen some people whose covers are so similar
Right.
to each other that I kind of look at them and think, oh, have I already read that? But yours is they've got such a strong look to them. Yeah, because of the colours, they're all so different. And also the titles are all, you know, quite different as well. So yeah, it's exciting. Can't wait to read it. The arc's going to be printed soon. Do I get one?
They are going to, so yeah, I'm sure I can arrange for that to happen. I did rail a little bit against having to do an advanced reading copy because, as you know, it can lock quite a few weeks off the schedule. And when you're on a book a year schedule,
yeah, I don't know if there'll be time.
But booksellers like them apparently, and so do reviewers. And
I don't know whether there'll be time for one for my lucky sisters. So we'll just see how that goes. But yeah, it's always exciting to get a book before everybody else does.
Look, we love a bit of book mail, don't we?
We do, even though it also falls as well, it's also a little bit pressure of a pressure because it's so exciting, you want to read them, but also, you know, you feel bad if you don't get to them within a certain amount of time.
Except we have somewhat solved that with our new releases episodes because you can hold them up on screen.
Yes, that's so exciting. Today, sorry, you're going to say
you go.
I was just going to say that today I'm super excited because we're sharing the love around a little bit because you have been giving me, I was about to say unsolicited therapy. Some's unsolicited, some's been solicited.
And I've got to say, unsolicited therapy has a certain ring to it, and I'm not quite sure what it is.
Well, you've been giving me therapy for the last year and a bit since we've been doing podcasting, and it's been good for me. I really, really feel that it's helped me not just in my writing and how I, you know, approach things like deadlines and stress and anxiety, but even my body. So, you know. Today we are sharing the love and we've got our first writer's therapy guest, haven't we?
We do. And I'm actually going to, I think, read her bio now before she arrives because
good idea.
I have made a clunky mess of doing bios once our guest is already with us. So
not as clunky a mess as I did the other day.
That was not a clunky mess, but I think, how about I read the bio now, and then when the guest arrives, and her name is Emily Paull with 2 L's for anyone who
WA like me.
WA like you. When Emily arrives, we don't have to go through the bio. So I'm going to read it now. Emily Paull is a Western Australian librarian, author, and book reviewer. Having formerly worked in bookselling, Emily is an avid reader and a big supporter of the WA writing community who regularly moderates author interviews around Perth.
She's done me. She's interviewed me on panels before.
There you go. And now you're about to interview her.
Yeah.
In 2019, Emily's debut collection of short fiction, Well-Behaved Women, was published by Margaret River Press. She was shortlisted in the 2023 Fogarty Literary Award for her manuscript, The Dreamers, and highly commended in 2021 for The Good Daughter. The Dreamers is now The Distance Between Dreams. And it's an April 2025 release from Fremantle Press. So I will ask Emily some questions about this book, so I won't give you the blurb or anything like that, but I can see she's arrived in our waiting room, so I'm going to put us on pause and tell her the happy news that she doesn't have to sit through a bio. She's in the room. So Rachel, I'll see you after the jump. Rachel, I would like to welcome our guest, who is possibly down the road from you. You're certainly in the same time zone. Emily Paull, hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I think I don't actually know where you live, but I just have a feeling we don't live down the road from each other.
Well, we'll have to discuss that when we're not recording so we don't give away our secret hideouts.
Exactly. I have a feeling it's not too close, but yes, we are in the same city.
Yeah. So for me, organising this, only dealing with 2 time zones as opposed to several across, very handy. So Emily, I'm reading The Distance Between Dreams and I'm really caught up in it. You've created the world from the start. So for readers who like getting carried away from the beginning of a book, they can get carried away by The Distance Between Dreams. But I'm actually going to
say what a beautiful cover it is.
It is.
Yes, wow. It's gorgeous, isn't it? I'm obsessed with it.
stunning cover. Was it the original cover that you got? Here, I'm already asking questions. See?
It's the only cover that I got, and
Yeah.
I got it the day before the book was due to go to the printers. So I was going, oh no, I haven't seen it yet. What if I hate it? But
Oh my
thankfully, I
gosh.
love it.
Phew. That's a good trick on the publisher's behalf.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't give the author a chance to oh, anyway, I'm glad it worked out. It's beautiful, and I'm sure it'll be very appealing to people when they see it on the shelves. Now, shut up again for a few moments.
Because I'm actually going to start by asking Emily about her being a librarian, because Rach, you are married.
I love librarians.
So Emily, please tell us about being a librarian, when you started being a librarian, why you decided to become one.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a librarian since 2021 officially, but what a lot of people don't know is you don't actually have to be a qualified librarian to work in a library. So before I was a librarian, I was a library officer. And I got into that through being a bookseller who worked exclusively with librarians. I used to go out and have cups of tea with collection development librarians and make sure they had all the best Australian books on their shelves that maybe they didn't know about. And then decided that because librarians are the best people, I should go and become one. So I went and did a master's online, and yeah, 5 years later, here I am.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
I think a lot of people may not realize that side of bookselling, that there are library suppliers, but there are booksellers who sell direct to libraries as well.
Yeah.
And so how long were you a bookseller for?
Oh gosh. Nearly 10 years, I think it was. It was 2 different bookshops. Yeah, long time.
Don't look old enough to have had nearly 10 years and then done a degree.
That's the filter. It's the filter on the Zoom,
don't you love
Rachel.
it? I've got one on as well, and I just can't stop looking at myself because it looks so much better than in real life. Anyway,
I don't have a filter. I don't think I'm missing out.
No, you look great.
So I think bookselling for me, because I was a bookseller for quite a few years, that's always been the best education, I think, in terms of publishing, writing, all sorts of things. So do you think that, and maybe being a librarian as well, has influenced the sorts of books you wanted to write?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
It is.
I totally agree with you that it's the best education for preparing you for writing and for publishing. I definitely learned a lot of invaluable lessons. I don't know so much about the influence on the kinds of books that I wanted to write, though. I think maybe the biggest influence on me wanting to write historical fiction was the books I was reading as a child. So I think it's maybe just strengthened it as I've seen all these great books come out and I've got the chance to sell them to readers and talk about them with readers.
What books were you reading as a child? Yeah, there you go.
The one that comes to mind is Jackie French. She wrote this book, was it called Just Around the Corner or Somewhere Around the Corner, about this girl that she is running away from something and hits her head, and when she wakes up, she's in the middle of the Great Depression. That's sort of the first historical fiction book that I read as a child.
Okay. And do you still read historical fiction?
Yes, constantly.
Did you always know that it was going to become historical fiction for you?
Oh, no, not exactly. I wrote a couple of woeful, angst-ridden YA novels in my teens.
Well, that's pretty good, because I think, in your teens, you don't necessarily have the capacity to write a novel given the amount of homework.
And plus you need to experiment and just, find your voice. And, I think lots of writers have dipped into lots of different genres before and still, do after getting into one.
So you mentioned writing the YA as a teen. When did you start writing for adults?
So when I started writing for adults was probably the manuscript that's become The Distance Between Dreams. I started writing that in 2008 originally. And it's taken, 17 years almost to get from that point when I started writing it to someone turning it into a real book. I wasn't writing constantly for the 17 years, of course, but every time I would put it away and think, this hasn't really got legs, I need to go and work on something else, something would pull me back to it. So yeah, it's been that long and it's been that one book the whole time.
Wow, so where did the idea have it out there almost? Sorry. So yeah.
Sorry, Rach, you go.
I was just gonna say, it must feel so amazing and fabulous to have it almost out in the world.
It still doesn't feel real though. When does it start feeling real, Rachel?
Oh, I don't know. That's the answer. It still doesn't feel real to me sometimes, except when I'm in the drudgery of deadlines and, feeling like I'm never going to get out. And if I don't finish, I'm not going to get paid, and, start stressing about bills. So, but anyway, we won't go there. So if you what were you going to say?
Well, we can. I think this is all part of the conversation. But I was going to say, so given that you've had this idea, you've carried this book with you for a while, Emily. When did you get the idea for it, and what was the spark behind the story?
I really like this idea, and I think I probably stole it from Natasha Lester, that ideas come from like a convergence of multiple different things that you're interested in, and then suddenly you make the connection between them and there's your idea. So for me, it was sort of, I was in year 12 at the time when I first started writing it. So I was studying Australian history because, we study World War II Australian history again and again and again through schooling in Australia. And we went on an excursion to the Army Museum, which is in Fremantle, where they have these amazing like dioramas set up so that you can experience what it might have been like in a prisoner of war camp. So went and saw those. Also went on a trip to Japan that year with my family. So I'd been studying Japanese since year 7 and had quite an interest in Japanese culture. So there was that element to it. But then this was the MySpace days, right? So you would like go on a band's MySpace page to listen to their whole album if you wanted to. And everybody had those profile pages where you would go on there and they'd have the curated playlist. So this was that time.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow through following links, I'd found this band called Search Rescue. And I tried to Google them the other day because I can't remember what state they were from, but there's virtually no information about them on the internet whatsoever. But they had this album called The Compound, and I couldn't get it in Australia. I tried to order it in. On this trip to Japan, I tracked it down. I bought myself a copy and I used to just listen to it. And as kind of a creative writing exercise, I wrote a structure of a book set to the 10 or 12 tracks or whatever it was on the disc. That was sort of the original structure of the book, which then promptly went out the window when I actually started writing, because I can't plan a book to save my life.
Join the club.
Yeah.
Well, looking versus plotting versus pantsing discussion is one that Rachel and I have had before. Except clearly you did have some planning going on. You had that structure in mind. So was it that when you started writing, you just realized that that was not actually your nature as a writer, to follow a structure that was predetermined?
Yeah, I think so. But also the original structure, I think, had like a mystery element to it. And I'm not really a mystery reader. Like, I'm really good at guessing who the killer is when I'm watching TV, but I'm not a mystery reader. And I think you kind of have to be really well versed in your genre to write it well. So I think while I thought that would be a really good idea and I would watch that as a film, when I started writing, I thought, no, I'm going to write what I actually know, which is historical fiction, literary fiction, that sort of type of thing, and emulate the writers that I really enjoyed, who at the time would have been people like Kate Morton, Kate Forsyth, all those sorts of amazing writers.
Yeah. So I mentioned in your bio that because it's a fact that sounded really weird. I mentioned in your bio as if I'd come up with it. No, you have you had a collection of short fiction out for well-behaved women. So obviously you've been writing short stories as well. So given that the novel you started in 2008, at what point did short fiction become something that you wanted to try?
And tell me how to do it, because I'd really like to.
Oh, I think it's again, like, it comes from reading a lot of short stories. So that probably would have been something I started taking really seriously when I first went to uni, and I was sort of seeking advice from other published writers that I knew about, like, how do I do this? How do I make writing an actual career? Because I was studying English and creative writing and history as like a double major for my undergraduate. And the advice I was getting was, you kind of need to get your name out there. You need to start entering short story competitions. You need to get a few publication credits in literary magazines so that when you are pitching, maybe there's a bit of name recognition there. And, I don't know how true that advice still holds, but that was the direction I was heading at that time.
Okay.
So the stories in the collection kind of represent like a decade's worth of writing, or maybe a little bit more than that. So they were kind of being written simultaneously with various drafts of the novel. And I didn't expect the book of short stories to get published when it did, but Margaret River Press, who was my publisher for that collection, approached me and said, would you be interested in this opportunity? We're trying to get funding for like a mentorship thing where we'll put 3 writers who've been in our multi-author anthologies, pair them up with established short story writers and mentor you through the process of doing a collection. And I said, oh yeah, I'd be interested. Here are some sample stories. And then I got an email saying they'd got the funding, and I didn't respond because I guess I skim read it and I didn't really understand that meant I was going to get a book published.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
a day later, I got another email from my publisher saying, hi, Emily, did you get this email?
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah,
And
it
what a
snuck up
great
on me.
experience as well, though. What a great
Mm.
thing for them to do. I just have a quick question for Sophie, because you said you're not sure if that is, like, I've heard that too about, short stories and getting your name in literary journals and all that sort of stuff. Now, because Sophie works in publishing, I'm just wondering, is that still, as Emily said, a good way, or is it just one of the many ways? And
I think it's one of the many ways. So I don't publish literary fiction, but my colleague Vanessa does, and so I'm aware of what she's doing. And look, I think any way you can actually test your writing in the market, and I actually sometimes resolve from using that term in the market, but it's a shorthand way of what it is essentially. Any way you can test your writing against what else is out there and for a readership is useful. And sometimes testing it through competitions can be a way of focusing the mind for the writer. It's like, okay, I'm writing towards this goal. There could be a dating set for the competition. Often a deadline is really useful for people. And as previously discussed in episodes, Rachel, with the 4 tendencies framework from Gretchen Rubin, which I love to go on about. But given that the largest group is
you've mentioned it this season yet?
Oh, there you go. First mention. Given that the largest group is obligers and they love a deadline, I do think competitions can be really, really handy for some writers who need that accountability process. So if
lots of benefits.
If it's for that alone, I think if the deadline alone is of use in a competition, that's a reason to enter it. Yeah. In terms of getting recognition, though, which is actually what you asked me, I've gone off on a tangent. In terms of getting recognition or being noticed by people in the industry, it's always handy to be able to say also in your credits when you're sending in a submission that you have won a competition or you've placed in a competition for a short story collection or whatever it is. So no effort is wasted, I think, in that score. And I would imagine for you, Emily, the process of being published was probably really instructive as well when it came to your novel.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, it's interesting that you bring up competitions as being really good as far as deadlines go, because the novel, getting it over the line, was really the result of entering the Fogarty Literary Award, which is an unpublished manuscript competition we have here in WA for WA-based writers under the age of 35. And I think it's currently now open for submissions in case anybody is thinking about it. But for me, it was kind of like, well, I have a book that's finished, I'm the right age, and I'm not disqualified because I've published a book of short stories. So why not? There's no entry fee, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And I was almost at the point with it where I was thinking, well, I've published my book of short stories and I can't seem to get my historical fiction off the ground. Maybe I only had this one book in me. Liking to write and being publishable might actually be totally separate things. Maybe I'm more of a reader than a writer. Let's just enter this thing because the timing is right and see what happens. And thankfully, I made the shortlist, and as a result, got offered a publishing contract by the wonderful people at Fremantle Press, because who knows what might have happened.
Yeah, wow. No, I'm a big believer in competitions, definitely.
I love what you said then, Emily, about liking to write and being publishable.
I did too.
Things. Because that's often the case that I find working in the industry is that there's an expectation from some writers that just because they've written, they should be published.
Yes.
Liking to write is actually separate, and we all know published writers who don't seem to like writing anymore.
Yeah, I've had quite a few friends who say that they hate it, and I've gone through stages where I'll be like, I don't like writing, but I like having written.
Yeah, and that's valid too. So Emily, do you think you're a writer who likes writing or likes having written?
Oh, it depends on where I'm at with the current manuscript. Ask me a week ago when I was really in a flow state with what I was working on, and I was, annoyed to be pulled away from my desk to go and do other things. But then the last time I sat down to write, I had an awful session, and now I'm putting off doing it again.
So relatable.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you're working on something now, because as you said, you thought maybe you only had the one manuscript in you when what became The Distance Between Dreams. So the one you're working on now, is that something that has come into being since finishing The Distance Between Dreams, or actually did you find that it was coexisting all along?
Coexisting to a certain extent. When I shelved the book that became The Distance Between Dreams for what I thought was the last time, I thought, okay, I need to put this aside and work on something else. That book is clearly not working. And I had no ideas for a while, and I made lots of comments to people about, I'm retired, I don't write anymore, I'm retired. And then I had a flash of an idea, and it was during COVID lockdowns in 2020, and I had the opportunity to take 6 weeks off work from the library where I was working at the time, and I smashed out a draft in 6 weeks. And actually that probably led me up to the 2021 Fogarty Literary Awards as well. So I entered this particular book in the same award 2 years previous to getting the Distance Between Dreams shortlist, and was highly commended for it. So that was encouraging enough that I didn't quit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so great. Is that historical too?
Yes. Yeah. Different time period. Still WA history though.
Yeah. Cool.
And I'd also like to point out for anyone listening who is thinking it's never going to happen for them, what you've just said, that you actually shelved the Distance Between Dreams and thought, well, that's it, I'm giving up on it. And now it's being published. So writers who perhaps have something in the proverbial bottom drawer that they may have given up on in one sense, but it's still in their heart. And I think it sounds like for you that this story was still with you, so that even though intellectually you decided, no, nothing's going to happen, you still wanted it to be out in the world. If it's still tugging at you, there's a reason.
Yeah.
For sure.
Also, sometimes so many people I've heard say, you know, they were going to give up. And me, myself, after 15 years, I'd said, that's it. You know, it's my last attempt over it. And it's always when they say, no, I'm giving up, or that something actually usually happens. And same with ideas and things like that. I feel like it's the universe saying, you're not going to make the decision on what's going to happen. I'm going to make the decision. So here's an idea. See if you can resist me.
I often call it the act of surrender, that surrendering will often create this vacuum because nature abhors a vacuum. Something will come in to fill it. And I have found that surrendering can, but it has to sort of be, it's not that conscious thing of, oh, if I surrender now, then maybe something will happen. It's actually a genuine point of, I think, Rachel, when you reached it, it was, I give up, I can't do this anymore. And you felt that, and then that, in a sense, created a vacuum.
Yeah. Well, as I often say to people, give up if you can. If you can't, then you know that you are meant to be a writer. You're not allowed to retire.
So, Emily, when you realised the Distance Between Dreams was going to be published, did you just think, well, I can't quite believe it. How is this thing going to be real? It's actually going to be an artifact that people can hold?
Yeah, it was pretty much exactly that. I didn't actually believe my own senses at first, because Fremantle Press had seen the manuscript before in earlier versions and had said no thank you to it. And now they were finally interested in it. And I almost feel like I'd been writing the book for them all along in a certain sense. So it was like, oh, finally, finally I've got it to where it needs to be. But then, waiting for the email to come through to say, come and sign your contract, I'm going, hang on, was that whole thing a fever dream? That whole night was very stressful. Did I hallucinate? And yeah, I have a copy of the book that I can hold and read, and it still doesn't feel real. And the launch is less than 2 weeks away, and people keep saying, are you excited? And I'm going, I don't know, should I be?
Yeah.
It is a weird process in terms of time, I think, having a book published, because yes, it takes a long time to write. You go through the whole editorial process, and then it goes to the printer, and then you wait. And then you will get a copy, and then it seems real, but it's still not out in the world. And so, yeah, time often doesn't have the shape we think it has anyway. And I do think around book publishing, it's kind of odd, just my observation. And sorry, go on, Rachel.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, if you got other questions, or does that perfectly lead us into writer's therapy?
Quite possibly, because Emily, you contacted me after I'd put something on social media saying we were going to offer writer therapy in inverted commas. And the reason
was like, disclaimer, we're not therapists. Sophie's nearer than I am.
So, because Rach has often said that I give her writing therapy. And the reason why I do it is probably just because I've been teaching yoga for years, and there are certain things that happen when you're teaching that mean you're attuned to people's concerns. I'll often tell you about them. Sometimes we're working it through on the mat without even realizing it. Your email to me was about self-care for writers, especially around the release of a book. So it would be great if you could tell us what you're concerned about.
Yeah. So your email was, your social media post was really well timed, because something that I just keep coming back to is all these expectations that you have as a writer when you put a book out, as far as needing to be on and needing to do publicity and do radio interviews and, you know, move your schedule around and maybe sometimes give up your you time that you normally have built into your schedule so that you can give the book the best possible chance of doing well when it first comes out. Every time I'm getting an email from my publicist saying, we've organized this interview, or we've organized this event, or do you want to do this opportunity? I could feel my anxiety levels getting higher and higher and higher. And I want to say yes to them all, but I also want to protect my mental health. So any advice that the two of you have on ways I can do that would be greatly appreciated.
So I'm going to let you go first while I write some notes.
Okay. So I think there are a few elements to this. The most important one to mention is it's your first novel being released, and it sounds like it's the first time that you might have had this sort of publicity campaign. And if you haven't been interviewed before, that can be a weird process.
You've been on the other side a lot of the time, haven't you?
I have. I interviewed you last February.
Yeah, and I understand because I've done a lot of interviewing, and then suddenly I was being interviewed. So there's that aspect of it, and knowing the right things to do, but also there's just the whole idea of how do I manage the rhythm of this? How do I manage the adrenaline of this? And I think a big piece of the work is, am I comfortable being seen? Not necessarily visually, but just being perceived in the world. And this is a piece of work that I think is ongoing. Actually, I'm still working on it. I haven't had a chat with Rachel about whether she's still working on it, but it can feel really confronting. And where I guess the yoga teacher part of me comes in is that this is something that you feel physically often, that it's, as you said, Emily, you felt your anxiety rising. So I think the response to a lot of this is often physiological. So I'm going to start by mentioning something that I heard on the podcast Happier in Hollywood. I think it was there first, as opposed to Happier with Gretchen Rubin. Another chance to mention Gretchen Rubin, but Happier in Hollywood is a podcast by
a drinking game every time you mention Gretchen Rubin. Just
right. Liz Craft and her writing partner Sarah Fain, and they talk about a season of sacrifice. And so season of sacrifice can be, just say you're moving house and it's going to be long, protracted, unpleasant, and you're going to have to fit in work around it, and you've got a kid at school and all sorts of things. Like, okay, this is a season of sacrifice, just getting through this house move. And so it's not necessarily about something that is bad, but because it can be usually about something that you want. It's just that there's going to be some toil associated with it. And you've got this attachment to this idea that you should be enjoying it because it's something that you've already wanted, always wanted.
Or grateful about it because.
Yeah. And pressure from others, like the toxic positivity thing of, oh, well, you know, just be so grateful. That can be a real burden. So sometimes framing it as, this is a season of sacrifice in which I'm going to have to do some things that I may find difficult, but I'll get through it. And it's also not imperative on you to enjoy the publicity process. So I think that's the piece of work there is, if you feel that publicity is not necessarily something that you are going to enjoy, don't put pressure on yourself to try to enjoy it. Just think, this is...
Get it done.
Yeah, this is the piece of work I need to
lay back and think of England.
Yeah, in order to communicate with my readers, and I will do it because I want to communicate with readers. I want to talk about my story. It's my first novel. I may not enjoy it all the time, but I'm going to do it. And then once you let go of any expectation that it's to be enjoyable, you may be surprised at what happens. It's part of it.
True. It is 100. I think. I mean, there's all different aspects of publicity too, isn't it? There's that in person, you know, actually going out, leaving your house, having to think about what to wear, you know. Well, if you're like me, I'm terrible at makeup and stuff like that. So, you know, and stressing about photos because people will take lots of photos of you. And I still stress that I'm like not smiling enough, or I've got resting bitch face or something. So there's the leaving the house part and making sure you're presentable, which for us writers, well, especially me who doesn't usually leave this office, like you both have day jobs and stuff, so you probably actually have to think about that's stressful for me. But also I think even though I'm quite an extrovert and I enjoy I enjoy the talking to readers, not so much, I do enjoy talking to readers, but what I actually enjoy, my minor is drama. I love the performance element of it. I do. Like, I like getting up there and, you know, chatting to someone about a book, but it is exhausting. Well, so performance element is probably the wrong word. Like, but I enjoy public speaking, right? I find it reasonably quite easy. I'm not nervous much. Saying that, I don't think I am, but I have subtle things that tell me I must be like, I start sweating a lot more and stuff. So I think, it affects everyone no matter, what you think, but I find it exhausting. That's the really hard thing, because you're having to be 110% your best self. You don't want to accidentally offend someone by, not giving them the time of day, and you're having to manage, especially when you have signing queues and stuff, you have to like manage people's expectations, because you don't want to, talk to someone forever and that other people are waiting forever, but you don't want to brush people off. So I panic about all that kind of stuff. And so it's exhausting. So I think what I've learned over the years is exactly similar to what Sophie said, is try to put as much everything else off your plate as you can. Like, I don't know about you. I wouldn't, don't try and write, on your new book in that time. I mean, some people would like that and that might give them relief from stress. So I suppose if that does for you, then good. But I would be like, take as much off as your plate as you can that's not to do with the writing, just so that you have time to rest, when you're not doing events and stuff. But the other thing is all those podcasts and radio interviews and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's time consuming and it interrupts your day and things like that. But I think Sophie's advice that, don't feel like you have to enjoy it or feel grateful for it, but do the best you can. And give it your best shot. But I think the other thing I was going to say is nap if you need to, eat well, take care of yourself. One thing I'm always saying to my sons is, like, there's 3 things you need: sleep, water, and food, kind of thing. And if you can't get one, get more of the other. So I would really look after yourself in that time. Some people are clever and they say make sure you take extra vitamins and all that kind of stuff in the lead up. I've heard that, but I always forget, but just give yourself a rest, give yourself a break. But the other thing is, I think a lot of the pressure comes from, I want the book to do well, right? I want to put my best foot forward because I want the book to give the book the sort of the best chance out in the world and stuff. And the harsh truth about that is, really, there's nothing you can do. I don't know, so if you're like, no matter what you do, like, you can put stuff on social media, you can go to events, and sometimes a book will fly because something in the zeitgeist, and other times it just, won't. So don't stress. What I'm trying to say is, try not to stress too much about the outcome, but yeah, just enjoy the process, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to both of you?
Yeah, just only be concerned about the things you can control. And don't worry
That's
about the rest
better
of
way
it.
to put it.
When it comes to events, one of the things that I learned years ago, and this was to do with teaching yoga, was that you can worry about how many people don't turn up.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I thought there'd be more people here, and why aren't there more people?
And you feel guilty for the librarians that have put the night on, or the bookseller who's come along.
Yeah, but what I learned a while ago was that the best thing you can do then is think, whoever shows up, it's perfect. Because whoever is there for your event, it could be 2 people, it could be 25 people. That's who's meant to be there. Now, the 2 people who are there, the adjustment for you and I've had this, so this is not, it's not like,
oh my,
this happens, is that 2 people who are there, you might end up having a direct conversation with them. That can be difficult initially because you're not prepared to actually talk so directly and so intimately, for lack of a better term, with 2 people in the audience. But you can end up having a great conversation if you think of it as, oh wow, well, they're here, let's just have a chat. So I've certainly shifted what I was planning to do and done that. My yoga teacher is a very well-known yoga teacher. She's taught to 2 people at the start of her career. So this is not unheard of, and somewhat, I guess I'm preparing you for it, is that sometimes you can have 25 people RSVP and 2 turn up because it's raining and no one wants to leave the house. But the 2 people who
lots turn up, but they've really just come, and I'm sure you as a librarian know this, Emily, they've all just come for the cheese
For
and
the food.
Yeah.
Or for the free wine.
Yeah,
or to get advice from you about their own writing or their own book, which is fine. Like, I'm not saying, we all ask people for advice at various times of our careers, but I find there's definitely a type of people that go along, not because they're interested in your book at all or you. They just think, maybe you'll be able to tell me how to do this, and maybe, and that's fine.
Yeah. So it's also about managing the adrenaline level. So this is the physiological part of it, is that every event requires, I mean, even every interview, depending on how nervous you feel about it, requires a ramping up of adrenaline that you may not realize is going on. And so when you're out the other side of it, you may suddenly feel like you've got a headache. Sometimes you actually crave caffeine because your adrenal glands are blown out and they're wanting
Just have a Diet Coke.
Or not.
That's my advice.
Like if you're craving caffeine, probably don't go there because it can make you a little more jittery. So I'm going to show those of you who are watching will see this. Those of you who are listening, I'm going to try to describe it. So to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system to calm yourself down, I recommend, this is a mudra. You put your thumb across your palms and you enclose it in your fingers. So you'll see babies sleeping like this. They'll often be sleeping with their fists curled up. So I'll repeat that: thumb across the palms, enclose it in your fingers. That tends to calm things down. It's also good for headaches.
How long do you do it for?
Till you feel like you're a little bit regulated. So if you're feeling quite worked up about something, you could just sit there for however long. If you're in an interview and you're feeling that it's a little bit agitating, just put your hands on your lap, and you could be in a radio station. No one's going to notice you doing it. Just sit there the whole time like that. It does work. I've done it from personal experience. And the other thing you can do is create a closed loop. So I'm giving you the tricks here that I don't often talk about. A closed energetic loop, which is to cross your legs at the ankles and cup your hands together in your lap and touch your thumbs. So that creates a closed energetic loop, which basically it means people can't get in, but also means stuff that won't necessarily go out. So I only recommend that when you are really feeling quite overwhelmed and you just need essentially people to leave you alone for a while. And that closed loop does it in a non-aggressive way. Again, it works. I've tried it. I'm not going to tell you on whom I've tried it, but suffice to say that if I want someone to stop talking to me, I will do this. And they sometimes I've seen people walking towards me. I don't want them to talk to me, and I will do the closed loop and they will veer away. And I haven't said a word.
Wow.
So yeah.
I was just going to say there's some other couple of things I just suddenly thought of. In terms of events, like don't forget that you can ask for help. So, you know, if you do feel overwhelmed, then probably, like I find this myself sometimes, you go to an event and you're just sort of put in the front of, like, you're waiting with everybody else and all that. And I don't mind it to an extent, but it does mean you have to be on a lot longer. So if you know you're anxious, I would say beforehand, look, I would really like to have a quiet room or a green room. Like, you say quiet room if you don't want to sound like a, you know, a wanker. Even though, you know, green rooms are great, but if you're going, oh, I need a green room, you might think you're sounding like a diva, right? That's probably a better word. So just say, look, I be honest. Say I sometimes get a bit anxious and I'd really like just to have a moment of quiet. And then you can do Sophie's tricks and stuff in the quiet room as well. But it also means people won't be coming up to you in the lead up to the event, and you won't have to, you know, interact with people until after, when you've got that part out of the way. But I'd also say, you know, if you don't have a publicist with you, and you may sometimes, like, solicit a friend to act as a publicist. So if you did this for me in Manly a month or so ago, and, you know, it's just, even if you post-it notes are really good, you know, even if you don't have a massive queue, just to have a little bit of you don't have to remember who the person is, you can greet them immediately. So I would get someone to sort of be your bodyguard, your protector, and kind of be there. And then you can have a signal as well. Like, if you're feeling a bit uncomfortable, give them a look, and maybe they can make an excuse for you, or, you know, like, just set up these things, and you might not need to use them, but then you feel, you know, a bit safer going into it. Sophie, I've got two more things, and I want to ask you one of them before I go into radio. I also want to say, like, you can say no, right? But is that a good thing in this? You know, remember that you don't have to do everything. But how do you feel about that, Sophie? Like, I mean, I kind of say yes to everything, and sometimes I get overwhelmed by that, and I'm having to learn to say no. But I am a little bit further on in my career, so I'm probably not, you know, as anxious about not getting, say, an article somewhere or a radio interview or whatever. What do you think, Sophie, at Emily's?
I say no to things.
Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily because I don't have time to do it, but sometimes it's might be a venue where I've had a previous event that didn't go well. I won't go back because that venue may want to invite me. That's lovely of them, but I don't necessarily owe them my time to go back when the previous experience has been bad.
So if you've got a gut feeling you don't want to do something,
and it can be, Emily, it can be that you just think, you know what, I've got 5 things on that weekend. So this is when you can say to your publicist, I'd love to have that interview, but I just make sure I can give them my best. And with everything else that's going on, I'm not sure that that's the best week. Is there another time we can do it? Same with events, because the thing with events is that they don't have to happen in the month of publication. You could do it in 2 or 3 months' time. You know, as a librarian, that library events often happen months after the fact. So you're in charge. It's your book. It can feel like you're not in charge because there are so many other people involved, but you're the precious resource and you're the talent, as they would call it in television. So treat yourself as the precious resource, and that is in terms of your time and energy. And if you want to say no, say no. And yes, gut feelings are good. If it's just a place where you think, oh, I don't want to travel that far. I don't want to be coming back that late at night. If it's a 45-minute drive and it's going to finish at 8:45 or 9 o'clock, and I don't want to come back that late at night because I know I'm not a night person, that's valid as well. So those things are really important to take into consideration, because when you have work to manage, we all have other commitments to manage. If you're doing a nighttime event and you know it's going to make you tired the next day for your job, that's a cascading effect.
I was going to say, are you taking any time off?
No, I'm not, because it's school holidays is the right after when my book comes out, and of course with the Easter and Anzac Day public holidays, all of my co-workers got in first, and management said no more leave.
So that's tricky, because that would be another way to work through things. One thing I'll also say is, I feel like you might already know this, so it's people like, duh, Rachel, of course, but you've interviewed lots of people for festivals and panels and stuff, and you do the research and you read the book and you put the effort in. A lot of radio presenters and journalists either don't, because they're really not that interested, or they don't have the time, simply, or they haven't got the book in time or whatever. And that can throw you if someone asks, like I had one, I won't mention names, earlier in the year, and they kept saying totally wrong things about my book, and even about me. They were like congratulating me and kept believing this being my second book, and I was totally fine with that. But I had my friend then, because I can't take stuff off, my watch was on, and my friend who was listening to the radio interviews live was messaging me going, what the fuck? 2 books? And I'm like, it's fine. But I'm like, do I correct this lady because she said it 3 times, or do I, not? And it's fine. I don't care. But then I just had all this internal sort of stuff in. So I think it's prepared, then that's come to me, quite late to realize that, you can tell the difference between those who read your books and those who don't. So if you can work out how to lead the interview in the direction you want it to go, like, don't act like a politician. Don't feel you have to answer their question directly. I even had one radio person say that to me, like, just, answer a question however you feel like kind of doing it. But I think that's, they just want to show that someone's going to be happy and listen to. So lead the interview if you need to. Don't get flustered. Oh, they haven't read my book and blah blah blah.
And in case anyone's wondering,
cherish the ones that do.
The politician thing is, don't accept the premise of a question if you don't want to answer. Yeah,
like it.
So there may be a question that you inherently think, I don't want to answer that. So you don't. So if someone asks you a question, you don't even acknowledge the premise of it. You just, as Rachel said, you just sort of answer a different question, and the interviewer will either say you didn't answer my question, but more likely they will just move on.
Oh, and one more thing that I thought of. Look, I've had some shocking interviews, some audiences where you feed off them, right? And so they're in the audience, and if they're laughing at the little things you say, and they're smiling, and they seem interactive, then it's great. You feel like, this is good, and it feeds off you. But then there's other ones where, they're totally they just seem to be not interested. You get a few yawns, someone's looking at their phone, they're not laughing when you think you've said something funny, and that can really unnerve you. But then I often find that it's a bit like with a book, I'm not the best judge of my own writing sometimes, but I often find that, then people will come up that they seem totally bored, and then afterwards they'll be like, oh my gosh, that was amazing, and telling me little things. So, try to detract yourself from, don't unnerve yourself, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. And the other thing I was going to say is, people don't remember. Well, I've said some stuff that I came out wrong or whatever, doesn't matter. But the more annoying thing that also doesn't matter is often you'll be misquoted in a newspaper or something, and it'll be like, say for me who writes romance, there'll be something about how I don't really believe, like, I don't like romance novels, or they're all trash or something, and it's like, no, I didn't say that. But all this stuff blows over, so really in the end it doesn't matter. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think I'd also like to address the social media piece, which is
good idea.
Don't be scary about putting your work out into the world and wondering what people are going to say about it, especially when they tag you. So it is highly likely that you are going to be tagged in someone's Instagram or Facebook post where they say they don't like your novel. I really wish people wouldn't tag the author when they don't like the novel, and that's just because it's a matter of opinion, that sort of thing. And tagging the author in something like that is a cruelty, and you're never going to be able to please all the people all the time. That's a good thing. You don't want to be trying to please all the people all the time. What I'll say is that it's really unlikely, I think, that you'll get any kind of troll comments, but if there's someone who comments on something and you find it distressing, think of it as being good for the algorithm. The fact that they commented on the post is great for the algorithm. Leave it there. Don't respond to it. And this is true for anyone who is listening. And I learned this from someone who has a massive TikTok profile, massive YouTube platform. She takes troll comments as being good for the algorithm. She just doesn't respond to them. So she won't delete them, leave them there. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, that's such a great way to reframe.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same thing with any negative post.
Or even emails. Like Elizabeth Gilbert says, just because someone has asked for your response doesn't mean you need to give them one.
Yeah, that's right.
I really like that. I think it's just about protecting yourself, and, don't do any of the things that are going to make you feel worse or uncomfortable. And read social media. Like, there's a lot of pressure on authors these days, I think, to, have a perfectly curated Instagram, and to be doing TikTok reels or just normal reels and all that kind of stuff. And I would just say, if you don't want to, don't worry about it, because and I know I'm against the odds possibly saying this, but it doesn't sell books. What sells books is readers raving about your book and stuff. And so if you're not comfortable, there's plenty of authors who are not comfortable with putting themselves out there and doing this, but they still sell brilliantly in the end. If you've written, so just do what you feel comfortable with. If you enjoy it, do it. If you don't, remember, you don't have to.
Yeah, but there is a lot of pressure. So Emily,
we don't have to do it all at once either.
Yeah, we've talked a lot at you. Is there anything you'd like to ask us now?
I mean, on the point of being tagged in negative posts on Instagram and reviews and things like that, I think I've got a fairly thick skin when it comes to that kind of thing, because I've been reviewing books for the AU Review for about 8 years now. And I really have the belief that reviews are not for writers, they're for readers. Yeah. And if someone has done their review properly, they will consider, what were you trying to do? How successful were you? If you yourself are not the best reader for this book, who might be? And that kind of negative review, I'm sort of quite happy for that intelligent critical discourse to be out there in the world.
Often a scathing review actually sells more books.
Yeah, because people are like, oh, what's the tea? I need to know what the story is here and find out for myself. And if they haven't gone, they've just gone, well, this is trash, and they haven't bothered to articulate why, well, it's not really worth my time. So I think I'm just of the opinion that I'm not going to read reviews unless somebody has read it and goes, I think you'd really like reading this one, and then I will. But I'm not going to seek them out, because as a reviewer myself, if I knew that the writer was reading every single review I put out there, I think I'd stop being able to review honestly, and I'd be doing readers a disservice that way. So that's sort of my philosophy around that. But all of the stuff about conserving your energy and setting boundaries, all of that sounds really helpful. And I've been doing your little mudra under the camera as well. So it's been helping.
Yeah. It's just, I think, sometimes giving yourself permission that you can do that, like, because it's such a great opportunity. You're like, well, I have my novel published and everything, and you're going to put it all into it, but you do want to enjoy it as much as you can. So give yourself permission not to do everything, I suppose.
Yeah, and also to realize that this is a weird thing to do. Writing a novel and putting it out into the world. It's not. I don't think it's a normal human function. I don't know that we are normal functioning humans. It's an odd thing, and so it's fine to sometimes think, what is going on here? What have I done? And what is this? And who are these people? So
why are they here wanting to talk to me? Like,
acting. Welcome to the inside of my head. Let's talk about it.
One thing you said too, I think is really good, that, you know, you've almost made the decision not to read reviews. And that's something that authors have to come to their own decision on that. But just in general, I think it's really good to work out what your boundaries are in every aspect of the, like, say even things like cover quotes and stuff. I get asked for so many of them now, and I'm trying to say no, but I feel guilty if I know the person for stuff. Whereas I know Monica McInerney just made a blank, and this, I'm not just talking about cover quotes, I'm talking about, you know, interviewing other authors or anything. Like Monica McInerney made a blanket rule. I'm not doing any cover quotes. She'll put stuff on her socials and she'll do that. And I must admit, thinking of her, oh, that's a bit, you know, selfish maybe, you know, but I totally understand now, because it's just so overwhelming, the pressure and stuff. And, you know, you might read something and then not necessarily love it, but you feel you have to because you've said you were going to, you know, say something about it. So I would just think, yeah, really think about in everything you get asked, think about what's going to be my boundary, or where do I, and I've also learned that as long as you're polite about it, and social, people will, I can say no, I should say no, because people will understand. And it's better probably to say no to certain things than to let people down because you aren't able to follow through on what you said you would do. Anyway.
Yeah.
This is why I need Sophie therapy.
Nothing wrong with boundaries. And just because we were socialized as girls and young women to not have them doesn't mean we can't introduce them into our lives later on, is my take on it. Yeah. So Emily, hopefully that's all been helpful. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to ask them now.
No, I think I'm okay.
You're feeling overwhelmed by us?
No, I just need to process the information and start thinking about my boundaries, and get some of those techniques in play, I think.
And
and it can also be difficult because there are people who would love to have a novel published, or who don't want to write a novel, but are on the outside looking and thinking, but isn't this the best thing? Like, why aren't you just so happy and grateful for it to happen? And I'm no doubt you are, and we certainly are when our books come out. But that's why I mentioned it's a weird thing to do, to write a book and put it out into the world, even though it's been going on for a very long time. It's kind of odd. So feeling odd about it is fine.
Because it's been going on for so long, especially with you, no wonder there must be like a weird kind, it's like a wedding almost, you know, suddenly all this planning and stuff it's utterly over, and now they're here, it's done, I'm married, what next, you know, like, so it's, feel for, you know, it's understandable to feel a little bit all over the place probably and have a whole load of emotions. Unless, Sophia, you have anything to say, I just wanted to say, because your book is coming out in the next month, and it'll probably be almost out by the time we release this, or
I think it will be out by the time we release it. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to let us know where everyone can find you online, and also if you've got any events coming up?
Sure. So I'm most active on Instagram, where my handle is @IncredibleRamblingElemy, because when I first started using social media, my grandma said you shouldn't use your real name online, so I spelled my first name wrong.
I like tag, but I didn't know. That's nice.
Yeah, sometimes people think it's a typo, but it's intentional. And I've got an author page on Facebook where people can find me, and I very reluctantly started a Substack 2 months ago.
Oh, we love Substack
well.
here. Don't we, Emily? I mean, don't we, Sophie? We're into
Yeah,
Substack.
I'm a convert, loving the Substack.
Yeah.
And
so,
the launch is
where are you on Substack, Emily?
Where am I on Substack? It's called Ephemeral and Quickly Forgotten.
Okay.
It's basically about the fact that the Notes app on my phone is a kind of archive, so it's random crap from my Notes app.
Love it. I just subscribed.
Right.
Oh, brilliant. And yeah, the launch is coming up. It's on Thursday, April the 3rd at the A.H. Brack's Library in Melville. And I'll have events spread out throughout the year, because my publicist is much of the same opinion as the two of you, that, you know, spreading things out is good. So, oh, yep, there's the email coming through that says Rachel's just subscribed to my Substack.
I'm not subscribing right now because I am the producer of this episode and I need to stay.
Yeah, you'll have to edit out the dings.
But I am going to hold up the book one last time for those who are watching. Those who are not watching, you're going to have to Google it to see the beautiful cover. And as Molly Meldrum would say, do yourself a favor and pick it up. Emily, it's been great to meet you about writing. And if you have any questions that come up as you go on this journey, please feel free to contact either one of us. I'm sure we would be happy to talk you through anything that's going on because we've been there ourselves. So yes, that's the other aspect of doing all this is ask people questions, and it's quite okay to say to someone, I really don't know what's going on here. Can you give me some advice? So
definitely.
please
And
do
Thank you
that.
both
make it
so
to one of
much.
their events.
Yeah, that would be great, Rachel. Come and take a selfie with me.
I'll try.
She is the selfie queen. I can't
Yeah.
take photos to save myself. Rachel's amazing at it. Great
so
to meet
much.
you, Emily. See you.
Thank
Bye.
you both.
Good luck with the release.
Rach, there's quite the little WA writing cabal going on, I think.
There is, isn't Emily adorable? I love her.
She's lovely. Yeah, it was great to meet her. And we did want to talk to her before she embarks on publicity. So even though the episode will be out after her book is released, it didn't make sense to talk to her at that time because her query was specifically about preparing for publicity. So we're talking to her in late March. The time you're listening to this, listeners/viewers, it's probably mid-April. I can't remember where I put it on the schedule.
I hope by the time it's mid-April that I've finished writing my book. That was really interesting. I hope she got something out of our first episode of Writers Therapy. Disclaimer that we're not actually therapists.
Yeah.
And so if anyone else has any questions, wants to come on and have some writers therapy and tell us about your writing situation, your new book or whatever as well, like Emily did, then that would be great.
Yeah, you can email me at sophiegreenbooks@gmail.com or send either one of us a DM or whatever it is. Just you'll find a way to communicate with us and we'll get back to you. And it's perfectly fine if you don't want writer therapy. We've just decided to put it out there because sometimes it's good to talk to other people who understand.
Yeah, 100%. Oh,
And that's why we do the podcast, isn't it?
yeah. We like talking and I like getting writer therapy. So, hey.
Well, we're going to leave it there for now, Rach. We've both been talking a lot this weekend because in real
surprised
work,
my voice is still working.
Yeah, this is our third episode this weekend. So I'm going to say, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.